Welcome everybody to this edition of Attention Talk Video. I'm ADHD and Attention Coach Jeff Copper, and we're here with marriage consultant Melissa Orlov. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
I'm kind of excited about the show today. Diagnosing anger. I've never heard of that before, and I think there's different kinds of anger. Can you enlighten us on this?
Yes, so along the lines of making a diagnosis for an illness, if you want to think that way, if you know specifically what you're dealing with, it's easier to figure out how to apply things that will heal that. So there are different kinds of anger that I actually talk about in my new book, The Couple's Guide to Thriving with ADHD, figuring out which kind of anger you're in.
So what are there's 4 kinds?
Well, there's more than that, but but we could talk about several.
Tease us with 4. How's that?
Okay. So one of them is an anger that's a bitterness, kind of an anger that focuses on feeling duped after courtship. So there's this concept of a hyper-focused courtship where the ADHD partner is paying a lot of attention, and then that goes away when dopamine levels go down, and the relationship changes dramatically and leaves the typically non-ADHD partner wondering what happened. And so that's one form of anger. Another one is a resentment kind of anger around how hard it is to change things in a relationship. So this concept, nothing ever seems to change. I work really hard. I work with you really hard. We do all these conversations about this, and yet nothing seems to change. And then there's another one, which is about flooding. And that's actually a physiologically based anger. That's the kind of thing, you've been there probably. Everybody gets into these once in a while where they're just completely cannot get out of this. They must win. They're totally overwhelmed by an emotion or by anger. They're flooded. And so the response to that is quite different from the others. And then the last one that's probably worth mentioning here is what I call an anger filter, where everything, you just have this sort of filter in front of you. I think of it as sort of visually, where you see everything through the filter of feeling bad or depressed or angry at your partner. And so even if your partner is doing things that are not particularly problematic, you view them as problematic because you have this filter.
Yeah, that's kind of funny because there's this thing I like to talk about, attentional blindness, and oversimplifying is, to me, there's different kinds of attention. There's narrow attention, which is sending a text, and scanning attention that you use when you're driving, and you can't use both at the same time. And so in this context, narrow attention is you're focused on one thing, and you're only going to see stuff in that area. I know in coaching those with ADD, I see ADD as a self-regulation issue, not a deficit of attention, and in that filter I can begin to see what those with ADD almost always pay attention to. And it's hard to see that if you're thinking in terms of deficit of attention. So based on that description, is that inaccurate in this particular area with the filtering? Is that, you're kind of looking for something and you're finding what you're looking for?
Maybe, though. I don't think it's an intentional issue.
Well, I'm using attention as a means to describe it, but the point is you're focused and you're seeing certain things and you're not able to see stuff that you're not looking for.
Yeah, well, I think that's right. So the classic, I'll hear an ADD partner who's been working on treatment for a while say, gee, I used to do 10 things wrong, and now out of those 10 things, I will do 8 of them right and 2 of them wrong, and my partner still focuses on the 2, which I find depressing.
I get that.
Yeah.
You got me fascinated on flooding. If somebody's got flooding, how do you deal with that?
Well, it's interesting, actually. So flooding is another word for flooding might be tunnel vision. What's going on is that part of your brain sort of shuts down because it's overwhelmed and blood flow is going elsewhere. And unfortunately, that's the logical thinking part of the brain. So not much happens. Once you get flooded, there is almost no chance whatsoever that you're going to have a good interaction or a constructive interaction. So the way to manage it actually is to learn what the lead up to flooding feels like and avoid the interaction completely by setting a verbal cue up front that both people agree, we're about to get into a flooded situation. And sometimes that's a fairly short time span, so you have to practice figuring out how to get away from that and not getting into it.
I think I did an interview either with you or Elaine Taylor-Klaus from Impact ADD, and when you said that, I think keywords was maybe what she used, but broccoli comes out. Was somebody's keyword. When that happens, that means that, okay, chill, we're not going any further because of what's kind of going on. Actually, I think it was Elaine. When you're starting to feel that flooding feel, particularly when you're hungry, you say broccoli, and everybody stops until somebody gets some food so they don't go off. So I think I kind of get that now. And it really, so you're paying attention to it, and you notice, and you have that thing just to stop it so you don't go there, to prevent it from that chain reaction from happening.
Yeah, so I mean, this is something you have to set up the verbal cue when you're not angry at each other, right?
Yep.
So at a completely different time, and you both have to buy into the concept that it's a harmful interaction every time you have it, so you just simply want to avoid it.
And what's interesting is a lot of coaching techniques sometimes is we say, sometimes you need to be attuned and listen to your body because the body doesn't lie. Sometimes you'll rationalize something. But I'm hearing that you can begin to feel that anxiety or the flow, whatever in your body to be that cue to throw that word out there. Is that making any sense in relation to this conversation?
Absolutely. So this is a physiological overwhelm situation, and so you can feel that coming on. I mean, if you have a repetitive area where your partner triggers you, and you know that every time that you get to this area, for example, that you're going to get overwhelmed and angry and start to yell and just stomp all over your partner essentially, as best you can, sadly, that you can feel that coming on. And the trick is to have the self-discipline, and this is where the training comes in, to stop it as soon as you start to feel that before you get into the flooded situation.
I'm just thinking out loud. I got to believe if you're on the other side of it, and flooding's happening a lot, and you know what that is, because I really like this concept of diagnosing the different kind of anger. So you say, I think this is flooding. It seems to me, Melissa, in a relationship over a period of time, when that person begins to flood, there's probably some mannerisms or some cues that the other person could actually, we're going into flooding. And in that moment, put them in pause and say, listen, this is not going to go anywhere because it's all just emotional reaction. There's no logic in here. Am I making something up, or is that making sense?
It might be. I mean, it depends on the couple, right?
Okay.
So, so the person who is the one getting angry, ideally, is responsible for managing their own anger. So you don't necessarily want to be responsible for managing your partner's anger. But on the other hand, if you see that there's a trigger or irritation thing that you're quickly getting escalated, you certainly could have a cue for that situation as well.
Okay.
And that happens sometimes for couples as well.
Got it. Well, Melissa, I thank you very much for coming on and giving those tips. I think there's a lot of other tips that are out in your book, so can you share with our viewers where they can find your book to learn more?
Yes, so the second book is called The Couple's Guide to Thriving with ADHD, and it's all about hotspots that couples run into, emotional areas of problems that they run into, and what to do about them, what they are, and et cetera. Anger is just one area. And they can find it at Amazon. They can also get some free chapters, download 2 free chapters from my website at ADHDmarriage.com.
All right. Melissa, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Take care, everybody.